I'm the host of Java with Jimmy. I'm also a member of Boston While Black, and I am excited to be here this morning to talk about the nightlife economy here in Boston. If you can hear my voice so we doing it fancy, okay. If you can hear my voice in the hallway and you're interested in this workshop, please come in as we're getting ready to get started. I am excited to have some esteemed guests. All three of them I know their work in community, and I know their work in Boston as far as nightlife and equity. And so there is a written bio that was given to me, but because I know all three of them, I'm going to mix it up with Karina smiling. With what I know, but Kareem Reynolds is the pioneer director of nightlife economy in the city of Boston, bringing a wealth of experience and passion for fostering an equitable and thriving nightlife ecosystem. She is passionate about it. I didn't have them clap for you yet. Oh, we're going to do this wonderful. Oh, okay, perfect, okay. But she is very passionate about this space and understands it, has different perspectives. We had a conversation, she's very understanding and aware of the fact that the LGBTQ plus community is a big contributor to the nightlife here in Boston and Massachusetts. So please put your hands together for Kareem Reynolds. My next panelist is the founder and CEO of the Collier Connection in Boston While Black. I see there's some Boston While Black members in the room. She has 20 years of experience in business development, growth strategy, brokering partnerships, and event design. Sheena is also a passionate sister who believes in equity, not just in nightlife, but in everything we do around quality of life. She has a rich history. Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative has curated many spaces for us, not only to enjoy nightlife, but to learn as well. So please put your hands together for my other panelist, Sheena Collier. You should have some claps for you all. Hey. And certainly last and not least is Helena Ajakia, and I always mess it up, but she will correct me because I believe that that is important. She is the executive vice president. The last time we were together, I gave her a promotion and she was over this building, but she is the executive vice president of the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau. Helena brings more than 15 years of sales, marketing, and operations expertise, as well as an international perspective to her position. She is another one who is passionate, very blunt, and very outspoken about the points of equity within our community, and she believes in getting people in rooms that traditionally would not be in there because of barriers and systemic structures. So put your hands together for Helena as well. We have about 50 minutes, or now about 45 minutes or so, to check in with you. And so one of the first things I will ask all of you to do is, and I'll kind of start in reverse, is, Helena, if you could describe for me Boston and Massachusetts nightlife in one word, and then give me some, context, and give me some context as well to that word.
So, thank you, Jimmy, and first of all, I would like to say thank you to Becca for inviting Meet Boston, which is so much easier than saying the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, to this forum and to this important conversation, and lifting, of course, my sisters, both Sheena and Karina. That is, I thought about this question primarily because I've been in the city of Boston since I was 12. I'm an immigrant from Ethiopia. I've been here, and I'm 46 now, and I've spent all of my kind of grad school years here, and I've left and come back, and it resonates with me that, I'm going to give you context and then I'll give you the word, that we're top 5 tier 1 cities in the country. And why isn't our nightlife seen in that light? You know, we talk about some of the biggest cities, San Fran, New York. So my one word, and I thought about this, is it's hidden. It's hidden. So I'll leave it there.
Sheena, your word.
Sorry, I didn't prepare. Oh, my mic was on. Good morning, all. I actually was going to say something similar, so I'll switch it up a little. I would actually say disconnected. You know, for context, also having been here almost 20 years now, I know people think it's non-existent, and I don't think that that's true. I think it's disconnected. It's hard to tap in to what's going on here. So you follow a certain person or you're part of certain groups and you only know what that group of people is doing, but it's really hard to know what's happening across Boston. So it gives this feeling that nothing is happening. And for me, someone who's tapped into a lot of spaces, I know that there's always something going on, but I think it's just really about the flow of information here is really stale, so, disconnected.
Disconnected. And Karine, I'm going to ask you twofold, based on your position, your observation of real, which you observe now, and then I would also ask you to add another word about where you would like to see it go. What one word would you like Bostonians and those that participate in the nightlife to say maybe 2 years from now? And let's also just name and give this young lady some grace. In most new positions, you need at least 6 months to a year to understand your role. And so, though we have our, and I affectionately say czar, but our nightlife director, it takes some time to go through the barriers and get things out. So, what you see it as now, and the word that you would like people to use when they're describing Boston nightlife 2 years from now.
Okay. Well, I would say what it is now is evolving. I came here almost 10 years ago in my early 20s after school, and there was no Boston While Black. I didn't know about Meet Boston. There was no Hugh. There was no Grace by Nia. There was no Estella. And now we do have those assets. And so it's maybe that evolution is slow, but it is evolving into what we want to see. In the future, I'd love, there's this thing that Boston's nightlife is boring, so I want to change it to 2 words. It's not boring. I would like to add not to that phrase. And that means a lot of different things, right? That means that people find themselves in our nightlife. That means that we have a unique, diverse nightlife. We have options beyond just bars, nightclubs, and restaurants. We have spaces for queer folks. We have spaces for Latino folks. We have spaces for sober folks to be, right? For our families, for our youth. That's what that nightlife would look like in the future.
Now, you can go ahead and give her a hand for that. I told the Becky team that they've given me boundaries, but anybody that watches Java with Jimmy know I feed off the energy of my guests, but I'm going to stay focused. But you all don't be authentic in your answers, but don't be surprised if we deviate based on those a little bit, because we could really do a deeper dive into that and just say that nightlife in any perspective, maybe minus the children, we need that to rest, self-care, decompress, and things like that. So I'll surmise that to that. Sheena, your work is focusing on removing obstacles. One of those major obstacles was around like liquor licenses and spaces and equity. We know a year ago that Estella's had experienced some targeting. And so for you, I would like to ask, what are some of the proactive things we are doing in these spaces? And when considering what folks like you, Karine, Shagun, and others are doing, what are some proactive things that can get us on the road to improving our nightlife?
So one of the things that I like to make sure folks know, in this nightlife, social life conversation, there is obviously a fun element to it, but a lot of this is connected to policy and legislation. Like, we have to understand how a city feels fun or not has a lot to do with how easy is it to get a permit, the liquor licenses. So I'll use that as an example. Somewhere that I think Boston could aspire to be like is DC. I lived in the DMV area for a couple of years, and look, you must just came back from CDC. Yeah, they just had Congressional Black Caucus weekend. And so in the DMV, so I lived in Maryland, and I worked in DC. And there was a website that was dchappyhours.com. And when I went to get off of work, I would look to see who had deals that day, kind of where the energy was in the city. There was just this feeling of the city, corporations, government understanding that these are not just trite things. It's not just about people being drunk or being unruly. It really is about stimulating economic development in a place. And it has to do with where people can spend their money, where they can gather. Those things are connected to policy and legislation. And so for all of us in this room, we have to be knowledgeable and participate in that. There was just a liquor license hearing this past Monday around trying to expand liquor licenses in neighborhoods of color. Those things are important, and recognizing that it's not, everyone doesn't drink, but for establishments to make money, alcohol is a big part of that. And so when we see places that aren't able to sell alcohol, it really impedes them really be able to build a strong business. And so I think one of the things that we all can do is really understanding the policy and legislative side of it and how we get involved in that, supporting folks like Senator Liz Miranda, Senator Worrell, and others who are working on those type of issues, and you know, Congresswoman Presley before them. I think on the more, I guess, non-legislative, more social side, one thing that I've seen just over the years, you all know I run Boston Black now, but I've done many things in the city over the years, and I think that something I've seen in Boston in particular is we talk about wanting things, and then when when people try to test it out or do it, people don't always really support it. I do think that this is a city where, unfortunately, we've kind of gotten used to not having certain things. And so, even folks from here go to other places to experience stuff that actually does happen here in Boston. But I think we unconsciously, for a lot of us, have bought into the narrative of Boston being boring, Boston not being a place for folks of color, Boston not being a place for fun. And so I think it is incumbent on us too to make sure we're participating in the things that do exist, showing up, because that's how we continue to build more and more. The restaurants that Kareem mentioned, you know, I'm just like y'all, like I seem like I'm out a lot, but I like to be home. But I do make it a point, almost like I feel like it's my civic duty to frequent these places, to make sure that they stay open, to make sure that there's a demand, to show that there's a demand. So there's many other things, but I think those are some of the things that folks in this room can do.
Thank you for that, Sheena. Kareem, on some of the points that Sheena was talking about, I know liquor licenses is kind of a state thing. You named the restaurants. I named that Estella's had experienced some things early on. We have Shigun Idawu in place. The mayor has created this position. What are some things that you are aware of that the city is doing proactively to support these spaces in which you named? And let's also applaud the fact that Kareem called out sober spaces. We hear a lot in media about mass and cats and things like that. As you said, Sheena, everybody doesn't drink. I may date myself a little bit, but I can think, how many of y'all remember the Loft? My good friend Dean is here. The Loft was a juice bar that was after hours, and so there's some alternatives. But what is the city currently doing? If there's anything you want to drop today that may be coming down the pike in this room, you know, we love to drop things in this space, but what is the city currently doing?
I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a policy 101 in like 3 minutes, right? So this week we had a hearing to expand our liquor licenses to neighborhoods who historically have not had access to liquor licenses because of the costs and the number of liquor licenses that we've had. The mayor testified on behalf of the city in support of more pathways to gaining more liquor licenses in the city of Boston, specifically in the Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain, Hyde Park areas. So that's one way that we are actively working towards, you know, building assets for folks to be successful in their businesses in our neighborhoods. Another policy thing that we're working on, well, that's open and it's already, one round has already happened, but the second round is open as of this week, are space grants. If we were trying to think of creative ways that we can rejuvenate our economic corridors, and with space grants, we are connecting folks with funds and physical locations for either their first location or to expand into their second or third or fourth location. We are physically finding folks spaces to be in our downtown areas and in our neighborhoods, right? And so Moleskin Babe is one of those folks, Sweet Teas is one of those folks who's got that. And so if you are looking for a space, now is the time to apply for that. And then we're looking at things like BYOB, right, as a bridge to a liquor license, right? I'm sorry, a night committee. That's when we're really going to dig deep on some of those other issues that people have with permitting and licensing to start these businesses, because we don't know what we don't know, and City Hall is hard to navigate. So a part of my job is just to make it easier and to make sure that you feel a connection to City Hall and to get things executed in the way you want. So that was my quick spiel on policy.
Thank you so much for that. Helena, sort of building on what Kareem talked about in expanding liquor licenses to Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. You are international. You're leaving out soon to go to another conference. So you get to see what's going on in other cities. When I come into Logan, it's interesting. We see the sign for Rosendale. We see the sign for certain parts of Dorchester, but we don't see necessarily Roxbury and a photo that looks like us. How do we ensure that what's going on with the liquor licenses, I know with Kareem at the helm, there will be, equity, but how do we ensure that places like Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan get the equity around the nightlife? We're talking about the economy. We're talking about wellness too, and so let's maybe delve a little bit into that. How do we ensure that that wealth factor of nightlife hits Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, certain parts of Jamaica Plain?
Thank you for that, Jimmy. And I think that, what we're hearing is that everything is interconnected in terms of making sure that we tell a whole story about the city of Boston and the fact that there are 23 neighborhoods. We live in a city that is 55% plus majority minority. There's 25% black people here in the city. We speak over 149 different languages. So I mention this because Meet Boston is the official destination marketing organization that gets to shape storytelling, right? Shape the stories that people know about the city of Boston. When people get the accurate stories about a destination, they then come visit, whether it's domestically or internationally. Our job, I give an example. I was talking to someone, actually, he might be in this room, who's a member of Meet Boston, and when I joined Meet Boston in 2020, we had a phenomenal partnership portfolio, 98% retention, less than 2% attrition, but we have a phenomenal organization, 40 years old, but not a single black-owned business was a member of Meet Boston. I should correct myself because Nia Grace has always been a member. She's now on our board. Douglas from MEDA was a member, but now we have over 94 businesses that are black and brown owned. I mention that primarily because it is about bringing black dollars back into the 23 neighborhoods. So all of this work that's happening around policy, around making sure that folks outside of the city of Boston are not looking at us and saying the only thing that's in Boston, which are all amazing, iconic things, is our sports. It's beautiful. We have sports. We have Red Sox. We have downtown. But the assets that we have within the 23 neighborhoods need to be how we go to business every day and telling the story and marketing the city of Boston. I think about being at the visitor center on the Common, the fact that we see 1.6 million people come to the visitor center. Last week we saw 20,000 people. And they'll say, where can I go to spend my dollars? That is how intricate and in the weeds we have to be about making sure that our staff there, we have 19, 20 people. When I got there, I think, most of them gave the same itinerary to everybody. Whether you're black, brown, Asian, it doesn't matter. We tell, go to the Fenway, go to Faneuil Hall, go to this. We've changed our narrative. We talk about the fact that there are 23 neighborhoods and that folks that come in here spending their dollars need to go to Park 54. They need to go to Nubian Square. They need to go and do a tour with Colin Knight. They need to make sure that there's assets like Boston While Black and that there's a phenomenal woman talking about nightlife. But if we don't tell people what's in Boston, they're going to think, and I say this with the utmost respect, that we're a racist city. We still have our challenges, by the way, and there are challenges every day. But we have also, I think, resilience of Black joy. There are business owners here that want us to frequent, as Sheena mentioned, their spaces, and we have more of them now than we've ever had. I'll end it with this, and one of the things with the partnership model that we did is that we actually onboarded 25 businesses that had never heard of Meet Boston as a membership organization, a partnership we call it now, which baffles me a little bit, primarily because we're the third largest sector in the city of Boston. we bring in $15 billion in economic impact.
For sector, do you mean tourism?
Tourism,
Yeah.
hospitality and tourism. And it was baffling to me that these dollars did not reach equitably the Black and brown neighborhoods. And that's changing. You know, we have new leadership there. I've been there for, so it could be about 4 years. Our president and CEO got there a little over 5 years. So there's new leadership, but that is the narrative that needs to happen, is that Boston does have culture and assets, but the dollars need to get to Black communities. It's not happening fast enough. It needs to happen faster.
Sheena, I'm going to build upon that and ask you, from the Collier Connection, DSNI, and just being involved, let's just also celebrate. You're a board member here at the Convention Center. Shout out to Beckma for helping. I'm not saying that you work on your own, but Beckma does that. They help facilitate those sort of spaces. And so let's start talking about Black folks, the economic impact, and nightlife. I'll just say it like that, and you can approach it however you want. Black folks, economics, and nightlife. What does it look like from your perspective?
Yeah, well, one, listening to Helena, I mean, if you all caught what she said, $50 billion, and that's the third. So there's two industries that bring in more than that. So the amount of money that flows through Boston and Massachusetts is phenomenal. And one of the reasons that I've even stayed here, done the work, and continue to do the work that I'm doing is because I understand the potential of this place. And so, just really quickly, I came here to go to school. I worked in education, community organizing for most of my career, and then switched from Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative to the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, which is down on Franklin Street in the financial district. And for a while, I worked at both places. So I worked on Dudley Street half of the week and downtown the other half. Literally felt like I worked in two different cities. And it really opened my eyes to how much we are not participating fully in this city. Even on lunch, I mean, I would do my own little surveys of like, there's no Black people down here getting lunch. Like, where are we? I know we work in these companies. And so, aside from I love to party, I love to have fun, I love to host. I've done that most of my time here. That is important for our joy, for our mental health, all of it, for us to be in community with each other and gather. And there are very real economic reasons why we need to be fully participating in the city. And a lot of that is through, if you think about, you know, name your favorite city, right? The reason why it's at the top of your mind probably has something to do with outside of work things that you can do there. Boston is great for industry. It's what kept me here. My career elevated really quickly here. And so that is initially what kept me here. But I had to find community. I had to find a social life. I had to find my tribe, as we say, through Boston All Black. And so for those of us up here and out there who are doing the work of not only thinking about our own experiences, but thinking about the future of the city and the state, part of that strategy has to have to do with the nightlife and the social life here. And nightlife is expansive. I think maybe that word people think have certain connotations, but as was said, there's all types of things that have to do with social life here. And so on the consumer side for us, I think the more that we, like I said earlier, show the demand and are really knocking on the door saying we need more gathering spaces. For me, I'm 40. I'm not really in the club unless someone invites me and I have a seat. And so I'm looking for experiences though. I do want to go to a lounge. I do want to be at a juice bar. I want to have to do other types of things that I don't always find that I'm able to do, right? So I create a lot of it because I can't find it. So on the consumer side, it really is just being more expansive about what are people looking to do at different stages of life, and how do we have the physical spaces, which is important, to meet those needs. And then for those of us that are business owners, those of us that can be vendors and other ways that we can participate economically, again, understanding that what draws people to a place is the things that they can do outside. One of our pitches to, we partner with a lot of corporations, is that, a job will bring you here, but community will keep you here. And so you have to have that element, because many of us can get a job at any city or state. And so really, what is the other thing? And we live in an expensive place. And so it's like, we need the amenities at least. Like, we need something, that's grounding us in this place. So I hope that, even when Kareem's position, before Kareem was in it, was just being talked about, and someone commented to me, because I was part of a conversation with the mayor about thinking about this position, someone older in the city who kind of saw it as like ridiculous. Like, oh, y'all are hiring, the city's hiring for something around nightlife. And I was like, that's because you don't understand. This isn't about your drunk grandchildren. Like, this is about the future of our region and people feeling like they see themselves, their culture, their music, their food reflected in the city.
Kareem, I want to build on that a little bit, not just because you're in a municipal leadership role, but you've been here. How important is it on those same three tenets, the economy, the economic impact, I forgot the other two, that quick, nightlife, and our equity, black spaces? Thank you, Sheena.
Yeah, I want to expand our thought on what nightlife looks like, and that's what my role is, right? I'm not doing this work alone. I'm holding my colleagues in our human services, in our parks, in our safety services to think about the night, in our planning departments, to think about the night and how the city runs in the evening time. Our city does not shut down once 5 o'clock comes around, right? A lot of people are starting their job after 5 o'clock. So it's not just our bars and our restaurants and our nightclubs, it's our hospitals. It's the folks who are coming into our office buildings and making sure they're pristine for us to come in the next day. It's our third shift workers. It's our firefighters, our police officers. And so those are the people who are in my family. My family has long ties. My mom was a part of busing here. I have firefighters in my family, nurses in my family, BPS custodians. How am I making their life better, their quality of life better? Because it doesn't end at 5 o'clock.
Hold on, so you're saying nightlife in Boston is not just about a party, and not just about a vibe or whatever. Go a little bit deeper, because I understood when you meant about the firefighters and the nurses and the doctors, but I'm hearing something from you that may speak to transportation. And we're going to talk about safety, all of us in a little bit, but make sure folks understand the point you're making about it's beyond the party. It's how is that nurse getting to work? They can only get to 3 a.m. to go there.
Yeah. It's all of the above, right? We cannot, city of Boston is from 9 to 5, like the building's open from 9 to 5, but our city is still running. People are like, oh, we're trying to make Boston a 24-hour city. We're already a 24-hour city. People are moving and grooving and working and making money in the evening time. And a lot of these folks who work in these third shift positions are making a lot less than our 9 to 5. When we think about our transit system ending at 12:30, who is that serving? Is that serving those folks who are getting paid less and can't get to their job, get home after their job at night? Where are they eating? When a firefighter wants some, their lunch is at 3 a.m., right? Where are they eating? Is it 7-Eleven? Think about the quality of health of our service providers, right? If they're not healthy, how are they keeping us safe? How are they in the right mental state? And so those are some of the issues that we're thinking. The entire economy of the evening time is a part of this role. I'm 7 months in, so I haven't figured a lot of it out. But I'm holding my colleagues accountable to include and be thoughtful about the industries, those large industries that are bringing in a lot of money, into their daily thought, into these processes, into these policies that they're creating.
That was a lot. We might have to do a little after dark on that. Helena, the same sort of speaking to black folks in the economy and equity. Can you give your thoughts on it as well? And then we're going to talk about sort of the safety piece, because there is a safety piece, to your point, Sheena, about when these are created, if we participate in them, and then how do we participate often? Helena, black folks in the economy and nightlife.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I'm listening to both Sheena and Karina, I'm thinking about the power of community. And I often say, those of you that know me both personally and professionally, I always say that my role, and any role that I take, whether it's on a board or at Meet Boston, I live my role in life from my community back inside to the organization that I'm in. So when you talk about accountability, what keeps me up at night, and I'll say this, it keeps me, a lot of things keep me up at night, but it's accountability. It's making sure that when we're making these kind of putting some processes in place, there's ROI, and there's measurable things that we can go back to. And I know we've talked about, you know, the fact that we bolster and we market that we are the epicenter of academia. We are. Hundreds and thousands of international students come here from all over the world. We also talk about our medical, and one of, you know, the top 3 or probably the top meetings and conventions we all welcome into the city of Boston. We're booked, by the way, up until 2039 here at the convention center. Correct.
Did you say until 2039?
We have a calendar, and we have confirmed meetings and conventions coming into the city of Boston until 2039. So I say this primarily because we want to make sure, you know, that these dollars, that we know about these conventions coming in here, because they're coming in here to Kareem's point. The convention is over around 5, 8, they'll go to dinner, but they're also looking for things to do. Those are dollars into businesses. But around accountability, what I think, you know, just getting back to what keeps me up at night is that we actually don't put processes in place where we can go back and measure the P&L. Measure well. Measure how did these conventions come in and who got the dollars, where did they go? And so live outside within your community to make sure that as we're talking about policy making, legislation, all of the things that you've got coming up, Karina, around nightlife and making sure that we put these things in place, we have to hold ourselves accountable. I know that we're doing that in hospitality and tourism, making sure that when we market the city, when we say that you can go here, you can go there, it's not just sending folks to the, you know, same places. I talked to one of our partners who said, because you marketed me, folks came to my restaurant, and my P&L was 20,000 healthier last month. That's how tactical this stuff is. The power of storytelling, marketing. So as I say, we have to live outside of our positions. You know, I necessarily don't sit in the office all day, actually hardly do as some of my teammates. I'm always out boots to the ground because I can't do my role and do it in a healthy and honest way if I'm just behind my desk, you know, collecting a check, and most people can, but I encourage us not to. We have to make sure that we teach our Black and brown communities, specific to this industry, how to use and utilize and leverage the dollars that are coming into the city of Boston from hospitality and tourism.
Thank you. You give her a hand. You started your last response, Alina and Karina. I'm going to start with you and just go back down the line. And I'm not sure with Sheena or Kareem who's going to have the most energy around this, but you talked about proper usage and you talked about accountability. One of the things that is interesting to Sheena's point earlier is utilization. One, utilization, if folks will get up and go. There's the balance between creating spaces here at the Seaport, and then I really would like to go have a drink and a nice meal on Norfolk and walk 2 blocks to be able to go home. Some of the latter I've seen on social media and whatnot. There have been times in the past where late tests or later spaces, and I'll just say that we haven't been good stewards over those spaces, whether through behavior, financial stuff. Where is that accountability and participating in the usage of those spaces, both when they're created here and when they're in the hood? And we'll go right down the line with all of it.
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's one of those things where, as an entrepreneur, you have to invest in the safety of your business. If that is your livelihood, you have to think through creative ways to keep your business and your patrons safe. There's a lot of technology out there, and if it's a barrier of knowledge or access, like, that's why I'm here. But we have to be cognizant of how we're creating safe spaces. We cannot rest on our laurels and like, well, nothing happened last week, so we're good this week. No, we have to be diligent. We know that things can happen at an instant, and that can change the course of any neighborhood. And so, I'm not trying to be scary or anything like that, but like, we have to create and foster the spaces we want to be in. And so that protection as an entrepreneur is is so important.
Where was the other, I'm going to ask you to speak to the other piece as the consumer. Sheena talked about it a little bit, but we know sometimes that folks may indulge or, get a little tipsy or whatever. Where is that? I'm looking for the macro and also the individual of proper utilization of these spaces when they're created.
I mean, if we're trying to be out here having a good time, we have to ensure that we are bringing our best selves to these spaces, and sometimes we don't, right? Something might have happened that day, we're kind of on edge, and we're in that space to let loose. But we may be triggered by something in that space. And so it's really important to self-police yourself. And, there are, and incidents can happen anywhere. It's not, it's not just in Mattapan. It can happen in the Seaport District as well. Right, and so we can't think of specific neighborhoods to be more dangerous than the other one, right? Because, like I said before, anything can happen anywhere. And so we just have to be cognizant to ourselves of the energy and the spaces that we're trying to create and hold those spaces dear so we don't lose them.
Absolutely, thank you for that. Sheena, your thoughts on
I
that?
have so many thoughts about that.
I was trying to leave it to her, but I know she does.
I'm gonna try because they're even jumbled in my mind.
Sounds like we need to after that.
I'm gonna speak as a person who puts on events. I'm telling y'all what I'm gonna tell you so you can remind me. I'm gonna speak as a person who puts on events, and then to the kind of, self-accountability piece. And then I also just want to talk about narrative and how the picture of places are painted that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just for us, just to what you were saying about the responsibility of the hosts, the entrepreneurs to create safe spaces. Just as an example, so you all may know we do this event down here called BWB, Family Reunion, right here on the lawn on D. It stresses me out every year. I'm responsible for the first year 3,000, second year 6,000, this year 8,000 people that I feel personally responsible for coming into one space.
Can you also just highlight a little bit that there was one year, we were talking that year that they had the big shooting in Texas and whatnot, so highlight that as well.
Oh, I almost cancel this event every year. Because there's always something that happens. So either the first or second year, there was a 4th of July parade shooting, maybe in Chicago. There was an interracial couple that got actually shot here. And I'm bringing thousands of people into, it's now called the Seaport, but into South Boston. And people here were giving me, black folks, were putting their anxiety on me, particularly our first year, about how much they did not want to come here. There was like a 300 comment Facebook thread about how I should move it to Franklin Park, and I thought it was Boston all black. Why are we going down, and so I started to internalize that and really was like, maybe I should cancel it, because what if something happens? And I'm not talking about from the patrons, I'm talking about people who were scared of them being attacked, like for coming down in such a large group into this space. And so I freak out every year, but while my team is planning the fun part of it, I do take very seriously of planning the public safety piece. I've met with the FBI, I've met with Massport, I meet with public safety here, I meet with BPD. Like, that really is my personal role in relation to this event, because people are coming because they trust me. I see older black folks, generations of black folks throughout the year. I run into people in different places and they're like, girl, I can't wait to that family reunion. And I feel, it's a nice comment, but I feel like, damn, I gotta make sure they're okay. And so I take that very seriously, and I think that you're right. It is the role of people that are putting on things to make sure things are in place. I know the commission center thinks I go overboard, but nothing's happened, right? Like, nothing's happened. We've had 8,000 people, and I don't even just mean violence. I mean, if you bring together thousands of people, someone's gonna need a Band-Aid, we have no incidents at this event. So that's one. The other piece that I'm gonna try to say is short, because maybe we need to have another conversation. So I went to Cartagena, Colombia earlier in the year, just for vacation, and was in this part of the city where it was just like the street was open. It was late at night. I mean, you had vendors, you had people walking around, and I thought to myself, like, could we have this in Boston? Or could we have this in a lot of our neighborhoods in the US? And one of the things I thought about was part of the reason people aren't good stewards of stuff like this is because they're not used to it. And that, my understanding of this, I wish I could remember the part of town I was in, this was just something they knew. So people kind of take care of it because they grew up going to it, right? So it just feels like this is just how it is. I don't think it's like no violence in Colombia, right? Like it's just that people take care of the space. And so I think for us, you know, if you think of our history in this country, a lot of things are still somewhat new for us. And when I say new, I mean in the grand scheme of human existence. Particularly, I think in a city like Boston, where all the things you've heard us name, these are things in like the past like 10, 15 years. And so I feel for us because I think that for a lot of black folks, sometimes, or for some black folks, sometimes we don't take care of stuff because we're not. I'm trying not to get too deep with y'all, but I think there's a not believing that we deserve it yet. And so I think that it's unfortunate the way it plays out sometimes, where you have violence and other things in spaces. To put it more simply, you think about different neighborhoods you go to. If I grew up in a neighborhood that's always had trash on the ground, I'm gonna keep throwing trash on the ground because I've always seen it. And that same person going to another neighborhood where they don't see that happening won't do it because it signals, it's an unspoken signal of like, this is not accepted here. And so my hope is that the more that we create these types of spaces, if y'all come to the Lawn on D, which I hope y'all do, July 20th, 2024.
We got it. This is the first time you dropped the date. The date's being dropped in July 20th, 2024.
Whatever that Saturday is, but I think it's the 20th. There's all walks of life at this event. I've been in Boston for 20 years. There's a lot of folks I recognize that I'm like, okay, you playing cornhole? Like, go. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the way that they're invited into the space. People know my energy, they know Baltimore Black's energy and reputation. This is the expectation here. We take care of the space. We take care of each other in the space. And so I think that we just have to continue to do that and continue to be intentional about setting those expectations for the spaces that we're in. And I hope that, I know that safety is a real thing. You know, when people say, oh, we want this in this place, it is like, well, are we gonna take care of it in that space? And I hesitate because I don't want to get into blaming black folks, but I do think there is a level of us not having to be stewards of spaces because we've been kept out of a lot of space.
There's a fine line, and because I know you, I hear that and wanted to go to that sort of deeper place. Karine touched on it a little bit about narratives, and Sheena, you touched on it even more so about not perpetuating some of those things that people say about us, but balancing. Sometimes we just, you know, Arsenio back in the day, have to wonder. And so we
How much we're doing? I'm sorry, can I make my last point?
Yes, but go ahead and make your last point. This, you know.
I was going to say, there's one more thing on her list, and then I'll add to
All right,
it.
and then we're going to take one or two questions.
When you said the narrative piece, I also want to remind us that we are not often telling our own stories. So, Caribbean Carnival this year, right? There was a shooting at Juve. I'm sure it was all over your phone, social media, news, right? Festival in North End, same day or same weekend. I saw someone, a black woman that weekend who had went to it. She was like, girl, did you hear about all these stabbings that happened at the festival? I was like, no, I didn't, because I saw everything that happened at Juve, which wasn't Carnival, for those of us that understand the different events that are happening. But how could I know what happened in North End? Because the Carnival was on the news all day. Right. And so I think there's also us telling our own stories. And someone asked me what I thought about, because, there's a lot of us who are like, I'm not going to Carnival. And I wonder even for those young people, because they've heard this story about Carnival every year, are just like, I guess this is what we do here. And how much that feeds into, again, people think it's a space where this is just the activity that happens. So I could, for all of us, implore us to remember too, like, where are we getting information and who's telling a story. Of course you want to talk about it because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course we all knew that was going to happen at Carnival, right? Like that's the narrative that's being put out there, but we don't hear about anything else
The
happening.
big melee at the north end, at the
Right.
festival of fishermen.
Right. When this person was telling me, I was like, damn. Like, she told, this is a black woman telling me her fear of being at this festival. And so, which I'm sure no one in here knew about, right? So I think we also have to remember that, yes, some of these things are real and they're isolated incidents. It's not like a neighborhood, it's a person. And we just have to keep that in mind and not kind of buy into the fear and continue to create spaces for ourselves and for each other.
You all see why Boston While Black is so successful, and because this is something that exudes out of all three of them, but that space that's been created. I'm a native from Boston, and I've benefited very much from Boston While Black. We're going to have our last sort of in the public safety or accountability piece from a leader. You started this sort of thread here, but can you talk a little bit to that, and then maybe I want to help get us back on track as far as time. Can you do 1 or 2 minutes on that piece here, and then you have a different perspective around workforce development. Kareem touched on it from the transportation piece and different disciplines, but can you give any feedback to the previous two, and also from your perspective, how does expanding equity and wealth through nightlife speak to the workforce here in Boston and Massachusetts?
Absolutely, and I mean, I get so excited when I hear Sheena speak. I'm like, go, go, go. It's safe to say I'm the oldest on this panel. I'm 46, and I've seen Boston. Oh, sorry, Jimmy. Got it. I think about how I consume the city, and I'm going to talk about mental safety, right? Our mental health safety is a lot of the reasons why we either tell a narrative that's accurate of us, or that we consume narratives that are completely a single moment in a single corner that has nothing to do with what's going on in the city. So when I came here from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, I remember, I was 12 years old, I wanted to do everything, I wanted to fit in culturally. And I remember sitting at recess, and I'll tell this very, very, the power of storytelling, the power of understanding what's true and what's not. I was sitting at recess. For those of you who are as old as me, it was a time where you would wear a fitted pair of jeans, you wear 2 socks, different color on each side, you would stagger them. This may not be something you all know. And I wanted to fit it, so I said, you know what, bump it. I'm into style and fashion, and I love all of that, so I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy a red pair of socks, a white pair of socks, I'm going to buy the jeans, and I'm going to wear it to recess. I'm going to fit it. I didn't know a word of English, but I felt like visually I fit in. I sat at recess. I'll never forget a girl, her name was Jennifer Flagg, and she said, where did you get your socks? I remember the sentence, but I most remember the look on her face. At the time, my father was an attorney in Ethiopia. He came here, but he had to start literally from scratch. So he was driving cabs, going to Roxbury Community College, working overnight as a security director at the Hyatt in Cambridge, which is still open, and going to law school. And he was doing it all over. He got my socks at Caldors or Ames or Bradley's. I don't know.
Oh, you go way back.
Listen, it's that deep. And I remember the girls saying to me, well, I got mine at Gap, and those are N socks. Boom. That was my first introduction of someone. So I grew up in Ethiopia, as I said, and Ethiopia, and for those of you who know history, which is all of you, has never been colonized by white people. We were occupied for a little bit, but I came into this country with the pride of being a black woman, being black. I didn't feel like I didn't belong in spaces, but that was drilled into me that I was black, I didn't fit in, literally a year into me being here. So I talk about physical safety and really mental safety, and I know that Boston While Black is really the backdrop of us taking up space. Interesting that I talk about driving tourists, driving our own dollars into 23 neighborhoods, but I'm as passionate about being where we're not expected. Take up space and be there. And one of the things that you all have to know, and I'll say this, is that the culture, without the culture, there's no money. The culture costs money. So if every black person left the city of Boston, we would take the rest, we would take people with us. Who went to Beyonce? Who went to Renaissance? Okay, we all went. There were a lot of black people there. But there was a lot of white people there too. The culture costs money. Nothing happens without Black people in the city of Boston. Not a damn thing. So go to the Seaport, take up space. We want more opportunities where there's events, there's restaurants. But while I believe in creating and bringing dollars and, I love this is your neighborhood, you do it there. We'll do it wherever the hell we want to do it. So, it's that mental safety that a young person, I won't say who it is, but someone called me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I'm at this restaurant in the Seaport with my girls, beautiful, intelligent, educated Black girls, and they were asked to leave because they were making too much noise. So for me, I didn't sleep that night primarily because I know these girls. They were brilliant students at Harvard, students here, they're working at this place. And I'm like, why would? It's that mental safety that we don't let people know. Live outside of your community, tell people these things are happening, but I guarantee you, the culture costs money. Without us, there is no money. Boston wouldn't happen. And take up space in 23 neighborhoods, but be in places you're not expected. Go to the Four Seasons, go to the Seaport, do whatever the hell you want to do because the city belongs to us.
Yeah, every neighborhood is your neighborhood. I know a lot of people are like, Roxbury, Dorchester, but this city is your city. We have to live that way.
Absolutely. I want to stay in the good graces of the organizers, and my point person here had already, and it's 12:20 on the dot. Put your hands together for our panel.